We were just talking about high school football, and I remember, Tom Allen is one that was saying, like, look, Friday night still should belong to high school football. And I get it. I totally understand from a television standpoint that kind of rules, just in terms of scheduling. But that game being set for a Friday night, there are some I've seen that have, from the college football standpoint, that feel uncomfortable playing on a Friday night because that's just always been a night that kind of belonged to high school football. But nonetheless, it'll be a good environment. Indiana State coming up 1 o'clock today. Purdue and USC, 2 o'clock. I believe that's 2 o'clock tomorrow. What time does that game tomorrow? Or 3:30?
3:30.
Sorry. But at 2 o'clock today, Tim Stratton, who is the first ever Mackey Award winner from Purdue, the tight end that was a favorite target of Drew Brees, one of the players like Seth Morales from yesterday. That was a fun conversation with Seth Morales. Tim Stratton going to join us 2 o'clock today to talk about not only that game, but also I wanted to get his thoughts. And the reason I thought, and kudos to Todd Meyer and Eddie Garrison for thinking of this aspect of it. Tim Stratton was the first Mackey Award winner, which is given every year, the award given to the best tight end in college football. And I'm curious how much of that aspect of things, does he still watch tight ends, and what did he see from Tyler Warren? How does he assess Tyler Warren? I know that Tyler Warren has already gotten to levels as a tight end that eclipse, where Tim Stratton played, but nonetheless, he is a guy that played the position and played it well at Purdue for a very long time and clearly knows the position. So I thought he'd have an interesting perspective, not only about Purdue and USC and the honor, but also Tyler Warren. We now know the Indiana Fever, who they are going to play. Eddie Garrison is the pre- and post-game host for the Fever radio broadcast that you hear on this radio station. Eddie, you can let us know now that Indiana will face who, and they will do so when?
They will face the Atlanta Dream Sunday, 3 o'clock. Game number 1 will be down in Georgia. If you are interested in catching some of that radio call, it will be on 93 WIBC on Sunday. Pre-game coverage will start at 2:45 leading up to the Colts game. So all the Colts coverage will be right here on the Fan and 97.1 Hank FM.
So this is a team that they played 4 times in the regular season.
Yes.
They each won 2, correct?
That is correct.
It's
they
a
have
best
not
of
played,
3.
Yeah, best of 3. It's the new 1-1-1 format. So 1 game in Atlanta, then Tuesday night it will be at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, 7:30, and Game 3, if necessary, will go back down to Georgia, and that game time is to be announced on Thursday, potentially, if needed.
You know what's funny about that? And you're not wrong here. And this is just a weird Jake Query brain quirk. When you said back down to Georgia, whenever people talk about Atlanta, they never mention the state. You ever notice that? It's always like, yeah, everybody knows Atlanta. Yeah, I'm going back down in Atlanta, going to Hotlanta, going to Atlanta.
Going to the ATL?
Yeah, like you never hear people. Like there are certain cities that are just synonymous with the state. Like Los Angeles, people say like I'm going to L.A., but then they might also say, yeah, I'm going out to Cali, going to Southern California, SoCal, whatever, right?
Yep.
Chicago, nobody says I'm going to Illinois. Back to Illinois. You just go back to Chicago, right?
I guess I'm a nobody then, Jake, because when I went there a couple weeks ago, I told you I was going to Illinois.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, you are nobody, but nonetheless, I digress.
I thank you. It makes me feel good.
There is an interesting
on this Feel Good Friday
matchup coming up. By the way, it is a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. Got a good story as it relates to the Colts, as a matter of fact, coming up at 2:30 today. There's an interesting thing that will happen at Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday. And I'm talking about the quarterback matchup. I don't know. We don't cover the Broncos regularly. Bo Nix is, you hear a lot of people talk about Bo Nix and the marriage with Sean Payton and how advantageous that is. And yes, Shane Steichen is a quarterback that is a quarterback's coach, so to speak, that we hope awakens the, Daniel Jones' career, or was thought to get Anthony Richardson going, and we'll see what happens with that. But I heard something that I wanted to share because I found it fascinating, and I'm always intrigued by perspectives that make me say, I never looked at it from that angle. And what I'm about to mention is something that I never looked at from that angle, so to speak. And let me explain. The quarterback position in the National Football League is the most important position in sports. We know this. And you are about to see on Sunday 2 quarterbacks, one in which we still believe is in the young part of his career and is on the proper trajectory in Bo Nix, because from the outside you say he immediately was paired with a coach in Sean Payton that brings out the best in quarterbacks. Look at the quarterbacks he's had. Look at the success they've had. Sean Payton that's where you want to go play. That's who you want to play for if you're a quarterback. Then you have Daniel Jones, who was in New York, didn't have a lot of weapons, comes to Indianapolis, and we say to ourselves, Shane Steichen is a guy that is going to reach Daniel Jones, and they're going to scheme to the benefit of Daniel Jones, etc. But I'm going to go back to something that happened to me in college. When I was in college, of course, I attended Indiana, and I was talking to one of the the dark dog days of college basketball always happened, and it was different back then because everybody had the same start date. I think October 15th was when practice was officially allowed to begin, and then teams would play their first game around Thanksgiving break era. There'd be tournaments and whatever else. And so that first, while we didn't know it, while nobody was in there, there was just this perception that the first 6 weeks of the college basketball season was just this dog days of like Junction Boys with Bear Bryant and the Heat with his Alabama teams that they made 30 for 30s about, and just, two-a-days and all of that. And it was like, man, I can only imagine what a just procession of doldrum it's got to be to do that. And so what I knew as an outsider was that, and there's a point to the Colts with this. What I knew was this. What I knew was that Indiana basketball in those days under Bob Knight ran a motion offense and a man-to-man defense. And I remember, I've never totally understood the motion offense, and I'm free to admit that. I know the basic principle of it, but in terms of how to run it and how to make it precise, and people can laugh and say, well, that's why you're just a sports media guy because you don't know sports. No, there are people that have coached basketball for a long time that don't fully understand the motion offense. Rick Barnes, who's one of the best coaches in college basketball, has reached out to people recently to